Welcome. Today we began part one of Nehemiah. There's a Nehemiah inside of you. Yes, there is. All of us have a few of the characteristics of our beloved Nehemiah in the Old Testament. And we will cover it over the next couple of weeks. Now, Nehemiah, if you read the book, you will learn that Nehemiah, first of all, there's nothing to indicate that Nehemiah was a priest. There's nothing to indicate that he was a prophet. There's nothing to indicate that he was called out, chosen by God for an assignment. The next thing you will notice is that Nehemiah, like the rest of the nation of Israel, the Jewish nation, was in captivity. And it had been prophesied that they would go into captivity. And so they were living and fulfilling the prophecy of their captivity. Why? Because the nation as a whole, had been disobedient. They had turned away from God, and God had allowed, hear me, God had allowed another nation to overtake them, to overtake their land, and to place them in captivity. And so here we are in the book of Nehemiah with them in captivity. Nehemiah works in the king's household. He's the king's cupbearer. Now, compared to some others, Nehemiah had it pretty good. He had a roof over his head. He had food to eat. He had access to influential people. He could hear about what was happening in the territory to his Jewish brothers and sisters. So Nehemiah, compared to many who were in captivity, had it pretty good. He lived in the king's household. Now, I didn't say his job was all that good because as the king cupbearer, that means he had to taste whatever the king was going to drink before the king did. So if somebody wanted to poison the king, poor Nehemiah would be the one who would drink the poison first. Okay? But be that as it may, you really don't see in the book of Nehemiah where he's complaining and bemoaning his state. He understands why they're where they are, and he's making the best of it. What's happening with Nehemiah is Nehemiah, because he has a compassion, because he have a love and a care for his brothers and sisters, he was concerned about not only their condition, but the walls of the city of Jerusalem. Because let's face it, Jerusalem meant something to them. It was their hub. It was the place where the Lord dwelt, where the temple was in Jerusalem. And now the temple has been destroyed. Of course, Ezra rebuilt the temple, but the walls were not rebuilt. And if you understood the purpose of walls in those days, the walls were great barriers. They were a protective mechanism. And so if you lived within the walls, you were safe. And you knew if you were outside the walls, you could not get in, okay, unless someone opened up the gates to let you in. So now, on a daily basis, those who lived in and around Jerusalem, who were his brothers and sisters, they saw the condition of their holy city on a regular basis, and that brought back even more depression and feeling more oppressed than what they were. And so they were the ones who were mourning in Zion. They were the ones who were really discomforted. They were the ones who were seeing this on a daily basis, and it was hurting their hearts. And now Nehemiah who's in the king's household, he gets news of their distress and their discomfort, and it discomforts him when he gets the news of how broken down the city is, the walls, and then how broken are the people. And so Nehemiah has this love, this desire to rebuild the walls, because he understands that if the walls and the gates to the city are rebuilt, there's a fortification involved. There's an uplifting that will come when you arise and rebuild the walls of a city. And when people see that the walls are fortified, it will give them life, it will give them encouragement, it will also add to their hope. So here is a project that Nehemiah desires to do. But because of captivity and his position, he just can't walk out the door and do it. Not only can he not just walk out the door and do it, he doesn't have the resources that's necessary. He doesn't have the finances. He doesn't have the wood. He doesn't have the stone. He doesn't have whatever, the bronze. He doesn't have any of those resources that's necessary to rebuild the wall. And he definitely doesn't have the people. So Nehemiah realizes that in order to rebuild the walls of the city, he's going to need help from the very one who had them in captivity. He's going to need help from the king, and he's going to need help from the king's people in order to get the job done. And so this task is huge. It appears, hear what I say, impossible. Come on, some of us have tasks, we have things that we want to do, they seem impossible because of the circumstances. But Nehemiah has a faith and a trust in the Lord our God. And so Nehemiah goes to the source. He goes to the one who's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He goes to the one who is the Alpha and the Omega, who told Moses, tell the people, I am who sent you. He goes to the one who he knows who delivered them out of the hand of Pharaoh. So he knows the history of the God that he serves. And he also knows that God is yet merciful, because he did not have them all killed. God was still showing mercy in the midst of their captivity. God was still loving in the midst of their captivity. And Nehemiah also recognized that they were in captivity because of their own bad decisions. God didn't break covenant with them, they broke covenant with God. And therefore, they understood the punishment, that the judgment that had come before them. But he went to the one who we say, a cattle on 1,000 hills belongs to him. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwells therein. Nehemiah went to him. And Nehemiah realized that this captivity was such, this bondage was such, it would not require just ordinary prayer. He knew that he needed to fast and to pray, because there were some bonds that needed to be broken. Are you hearing me? He understood the magnitude of his job, of his desires, and the job that he wanted to do. And so he went to Abba Father, and he began to cry out to the Lord. He fasted and he prayed and he talked to the Lord. Most of chapter 1 of Nehemiah, you will see that Nehemiah is in constant prayer concerning his desire. This assignment, this project that he wants to do, he had to take it before God. Can I tell you today, that desire, that project, that plan, that thing that you want to do that seems overwhelming, that seems so big, can I tell you, you've got to do like Nehemiah. You've got to fast and pray and talk to the source who has all resources. Talk to the one who can cause men to give out of their bosom to you. He did not go to other people in the kingdom. He went to God, the creator and sustainer of all life. He went to God Almighty, the Alpha and Omega. He didn't go to a friend. He didn't go to another captive. You got to know who to go to. And he prayed it in secret. And God says, what you pray in secret, he will reward you openly. And we see that with Nehemiah. He took it to God. And when he took it to God, God, behind the scenes, as we call it, moved on the heart of the king, because when the king began to see the countenance of Nehemiah, the king asked him basically, what's wrong, man? What's wrong with you? You don't usually look like this. And that was his opening. He saw his opening and he laid it on the line to the king. He told him what was on his heart and what his desires was. And the heart of the king had been changed. Listen, that was a big change, because these were his captives. And you talking about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem? But the king was also astute. Hear me good. Because though he was an enemy king, the walls of Jerusalem being broken down and the gates off the hinges, he also recognized that this wasn't good for him. And to have the walls rebuilt and the gates restored would be a plus for him. To have the city refortified would be a blessing to him. It would be a help to him. And if he could get the Jewish people to do it, why not? See, you got to look at things both ways. And so the king saw something in it for him. Can I tell you something? The very person that you think is your enemy, that person that God sent you to, listen, they can see both ways, whereas sometimes we only see one way. But the king, he saw how he could benefit out of it. Now, it doesn't say it, but you think about it. He's the king. This is a city in his territory in which the walls need to be fortified so that they don't lose the city again. It would benefit him. It would benefit his nation to have the people restore those walls. And so he gave Nehemiah what he needed. What do you need, Nehemiah? Here's a letter so that you can have all of the resources, including people, that you need to rebuild. And guess what? There won't be anyone to withstand you, to hinder you, because I, the king, have told you, go, be the project manager and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Now, hear this. The king also realized that a happy people are people who will work. And he had also Nehemiah had also presented to the king that, the people were in distress and moaning and whatever. Listen, the king wasn't so much looking at their God as what it would do for him. And if the people would be happy rebuilding the city, then the people will also be happy in the land, hear me, and toil the land and pay their taxes and grow their crops and do some other things. Why? Because they are content. So, in working Nehemiah's desires, we see that the king now can benefit from it also. So, he lets Nehemiah go and do it. I want to say this to those who like to just quit your job in order to go and just do ministry. I've heard so many people say, God told me to quit my job and go do ministry, and then you don't have any source of income, you don't have any resources. I need you to check whether God told you to do that or not, because there's no way that the Lord would release you from employment that He gave you without a means of support. And the support that He will release to you does not require you to drain the body of Christ to take care of you. I'm just saying, y'all need to think about that. When God calls you, or even if He doesn't call you, if you have a desire to build in the kingdom of the living God, the Lord will provide the sources and the resources to get the job done. And that's what we see in Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah is now the project lead. And the project lead, he's heard some things, but now he has to go to Jerusalem himself to make some assessments. No matter what you hear and no matter how much research you get off the internet, there are some things that's going to require you to go and look firsthand and see it yourself. And what I like about it in chapter 2, when it talks about Nehemiah going to Jerusalem and assessing the walls and doing it by night, listen, there are some things you need to do in secret. People put everything on social media, step by step by step by step. And then you wonder why you've got so much warfare. You want to eliminate warfare, not only in your life, but in the planning stages of your project. Keep your mouth closed. Do your analysis. Do it yourself. Yes, some men went with him, and as he walked around the wall, they went with him, but they did not know all of the details. They did not know why. You gotta, what they say, you gotta know when to hold, you gotta know when to fold. You've got to know when to release things. And there are so many people who release information before time. You release aspects of desires before your time. You release aspects of the project before time. And the next thing you know, by the time you get ready to do it, someone has stolen it and gone off and done it. And you're there with your mouth open. Or someone is dropping seeds of doubt, not only in your ears, but in those team members who are going to help you. And so by the time you get ready to present your proposal, you have adversity, and they're prepared to fight you every step of the way. Nehemiah didn't do that. He kept it to himself. And once he got all of the information that he needed, he basically wrote up a proposal. He outlined his proposal. That's what we do. You outline what you're proposing to do. And again, when he got ready to present the proposal, he didn't present it to the world. He presented it to those who would have direct, hear me, direct, not indirect. These are ones who would be directly impacted. These are the ones who would work directly on the project. These are the people who not only would work on the project, but their families and those who came under them would have to work on the project. So he met with the proper leadership. He met with the Jewish leaders, the nobles, the elders, the people in, guess what, also that area who would be doing the work. When you get ready to make your proposal, make sure you've got the right people at the table. If your proposal, for instance, involves your local assembly and doing some work in your local assembly, okay? Why do you, okay, you're going to need who? The pastor. You're going to need the trustee board. You're going to probably need the deacon board, okay? You're going to need the finance committee. Do you really need the usher? Do you really need the choir director for the initial meeting? Now, I'm not saying that they won't eventually be involved in the project, but when you get ready to make the proposal and tell them what God has given, God has told you to do, because this is a desire that you have, that God is blessing you with, and how the king is brought into it, and how the king is going to supply resources for you to do the building. He got the people in the room who were needed at that time. And then it was left for them, once they bought in, to go and tell. They would tell the rest of the people later. If it's not the church, whatever it is, get the right people at the table when you make your proposal. Listen, if your project involves the county, you may need to get the county executive. If it involves something in the city, you may have to get some people in the city. But you need to find out who needs to be at the table and bring those people in first. Maybe your proposal involves another nonprofit, and you're going to them because that's who you need. Therefore, you go to the board of directors. Are you hearing me today? Nehemiah presented it. And when he presented it with enthusiasm. He presented it with a positive flair about it. He did not bemoan about their captivity and what was going on with them. No, he showed them an opportunity to fortify and rebuild the walls, and how rebuilding the walls of the city of Jerusalem and the gates to the city would also help them to be refortified. It would help them to arise. It would also bring joy to the people. to see that their city was being rebuilt. Thank you for listening. This is Nehemiah Part 1, Working His Desires. I hope that you can see this as you who may have put a project aside because you felt as if no one was listening. Perhaps there is a desire that you have that is so big that you think it's impossible. Begin to do like Nehemiah. Seek the Lord, fast, pray, get direction, analyze, assess, and begin to write your proposal. And as you're doing this, you will see the people that you're going to need to present it to. God bless you. Until next time, when we begin to talk about the wall, Nehemiah and the wall, and what the wall represents. The wall, a catalyst of change, coming to you in part 2. God bless you.